My best friend just confessed she's been in love with me for years, and I'm married to someone else. I feel like the floor has dropped out from under me, and I don't know what to do or how to feel. To give some context, I'm a 32-year-old guy, and my best friend, let's call her Emily, 31F, and I have been inseparable since college. We met freshman year and clicked instantly. My wife, 30F, let's call her Jessica, knows Emily well. She was even a bridesmaid at our wedding. Jessica and I have been married for 5 years, together for 7. Emily has been there through it all, as my rock, my confidant, my closest friend. I never imagined she felt anything more than platonic friendship. Last night, everything changed. Emily and I had plans to grab dinner and catch up, which is something we do often, usually with my wife, but Jessica was out of town for work this week. So it was just the two of us. I didn't think anything of it. We've hung out one-on-one countless times over the years. We went to our favorite little bar and amp, Grill, the one we used to frequent in our early 20s. The night started out like any other. We were laughing, talking about work. She recently started a new job she's stressed about, and I was lending an ear, reminiscing about dumb college stories. Just our usual banter. I could tell Emily seemed anxious, though. She was fidgeting with her glass, barely touching her food. At one point, I asked if she was okay. She forced a smile and said she was fine, just had a lot on her mind. I assumed it was work stress. In hindsight, there were so many signs something was off. She was unusually quiet during the drive home. And when we got back to her place, I was dropping her off. She asked me if I wanted to come in for a bit. Normally, I wouldn't think twice about it. We often hang out and watch a show or something. But it was already late and I was pretty tired. I almost said no, but she looked so tense I figured maybe she really needed to talk. I thought maybe something happened at work or she had some personal issue she needed advice on. So I went inside. As soon as we stepped into her living room, I felt this weird energy radiating from her. Emily was pacing a bit, not meeting my eyes. I remember feeling a slight pit in my stomach, like something big was about to happen. I sat down on her couch and gently asked, "Em, what's going on? You're kind of scaring me. You know you can tell me anything." She stood there with her arms wrapped around herself and said, "Actually, can I pour myself another drink first?" I said sure, a bit perplexed. She poured some wine, offered me some, I declined since I was driving, and then she just blurted it out. Out of nowhere, voice trembling, she said, "I can't keep this in anymore. I have to tell you, I'm in love with you. I have been for years." Just like that. In one breath, the words tumbled out. I felt like my brain short-circuited. In love with me? For years? I honestly thought I misheard at first. The room went completely silent, except for my heart pounding in my ears. Emily had tears in her eyes. I was frozen, just staring at her like an idiot. I think I managed to say, "What? What did you just say?" Even though I heard it perfectly. She started crying then, and that snapped me out of my daze a bit. She sat down on the couch beside me, but kept a couple feet of distance. She couldn't even look at me at first. Then everything just poured out of her in a rush. She said she never intended to fall for me, that it just happened over the years. That seeing me get married was one of the hardest things she ever went through, but she put on a smile because she wanted me to be happy. She admitted she tried to move on, even dated other guys, but she always compared them to me and it never worked out. All of this spilled out between sobs. My mind started racing through all our years of friendship, looking for signs I might have missed. In retrospect, there were little things. For instance, when we were about 22, drunk at a friend's wedding, Emily joked, "If neither of us is married by 30, let's just marry each other." I laughed it off at the time as a silly pact between friends. Now I wonder if she meant it even a little. She also was oddly critical or standoffish with a couple of my exes back in the day, including, initially, with Jessica until they eventually became close friends. I always teased her that she was like my protective sister who didn't think anyone was good enough for me. She'd just roll her eyes. Was that jealousy in disguise? Even at my wedding, I recall Emily crying a lot during her maid of honor speech about friendship and loyalty. I thought those were happy tears. Now, I'm not so sure. I was absolutely speechless as all of this revelation hit me. My mouth was open, but no words came out. 1,000 thoughts were exploding in my head all at once. I remember literally pinching my arm, wondering if I was dreaming. But this was very real. My best friend, who I have never once thought of in that way, was confessing her love for me while tears streamed down her face. And my wife who I love deeply, who trusts both of us completely, she had no idea any of this was happening. After what felt like an eternity of me just sitting there in shock, I finally managed to speak. I can't recall my exact words. My mind was and is reeling. But it was something like, "Emily, I'm sorry. I had no idea. You know I'm married to Jess. I love her." I was stammering a lot, probably not very coherent. I remember saying, "I love you too, but as a friend, I just..." And before I could finish, Emily let out a bitter little laugh through her tears. It broke my heart. She said, "I know you're married. I know. God, I'm not trying to ruin your life. I can't lie about it anymore. It hurts too much. You deserve to know the truth. I can't watch from the sidelines and pretend I'm okay anymore." She wiped her eyes, and for the first time that night, she looked directly at me. The look on her face. She looked so vulnerable, terrified, hopeful, and devastated all at once. I will never forget it. Then she asked me softly, have you really never felt anything more for me? Ever? Not even once? I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. Part of me wanted to lie, to tell her something to ease her pain. Maybe say in another life, maybe. Or there was a time I wondered, even if it wasn't true. But I knew that would only make things harder and give her false hope, and it would be a betrayal of my wife. The truth is, I never allowed myself to think of Emily that way. I love her deeply, but like family, she's like a sister to me. Or at least that's what I always believed. So I answered as gently as I could. Em, you've been my best friend for so long. I never thought of us romantically. I'm sorry, I love Jess. She's my wife. As soon as I said it, Emily nodded, biting her lip as fresh tears welled up. Her face crumpled and she started sobbing harder. I instinctively reached out to comfort her. I put my arm around her shoulders. She didn't pull away. Actually, she collapsed against me, crying into my chest. It was heartbreak in its purest form. I was choking up too at this point. I kept saying, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, and she just kept shaking her head against me. We stayed like that for I don't know how long, her clinging to me and crying, me holding her while in complete shock and also nearly crying. It felt surreal, like an out-of-body experience. Eventually, her sobs started to quiet down. She pulled back, wiping her face. And then she did something that honestly scared me. She leaned in and tried to kiss me. It happened so fast. One moment she was pulling away from our embrace, and the next her hands were on my cheeks and her lips were on mine. It was maybe 1 or 2 seconds, but long enough for me to realize Emily is kissing me. I didn't kiss her back. As soon as my brain caught up, I kind of jerked away instinctively. I was like, whoa, Em, I can't. And I gently pushed her back. She immediately recoiled, looking absolutely mortified. Oh my God! I'm sorry, she stammered. She jumped up from the couch, covering her mouth with her hand like she wished she could rewind that moment. I also shot up to my feet, heart hammering, adrenaline surging. I was in full panic mode. That was the first time I had even a semi-romantic contact with someone who wasn't my wife since Jess and I started dating 7 years ago. And it was with my best friend, moments after she professed her love. It was too much. I blurted out, I think I should go. My voice was probably shaking. Emily looked stricken, but she nodded and turned away, unable to look at me. As I was heading to the door, she said in a very small voice, Please, don't hate me. I turned back. She looked so small and broken, arms wrapped around herself. It was utterly heartbreaking. I told her, I could never hate you, Em. Never. But I need time to think. This is a lot. She just nodded, still not meeting my eyes, and whispered, I'm so sorry, one more time. Then I left. I walked out and gently closed the door behind me, and as soon as I heard it latch, I practically ran to my car. I drove home in a complete daze. I honestly don't even remember most of the drive. I know I nearly ran a red light at one point because my mind was somewhere else entirely. When I got home, I didn't go inside right away. I just sat in my car in the driveway for a long time, maybe 20 to 30 minutes, trying to process what the hell just happened. I felt a swirl of intense emotions, shock, confusion, an overwhelming sadness for Emily, and a creeping sense of guilt. Even though rationally I know I didn't do anything to lead her on intentionally, I still felt guilty that my existence, my actions, whatever, caused her pain. And then fear about what this means for our friendship, and fear about what happens if or when my wife finds out. As of now, I haven't told Jessica. She's still out of town and won't be back until tomorrow night. As of this moment, the morning after this all happened, she has no clue any of this went down. I keep picking up my phone to call her, then putting it down. I feel like I'm betraying her by not telling her immediately, but how do you even start that conversation? Hey honey, hope your work trip is going well. By the way, last night Emily told me she's in love with me, and then she kissed me. So how's your day going? Just thinking about that makes me feel sick. Jess trusts me completely, and she trusts Emily too. She always used to joke that Emily and I were like siblings. In fact, early in our relationship, Jess once asked me if I ever had any feelings for Emily, since we were so close. I remember laughing and saying, absolutely not, she's like my sister. That reassured Jessica, and eventually, Jess and Emily became good friends on their own. We often hang out as a trio. The idea that all this time Emily felt so differently, it blows my mind. Jessica will be blindsided. I worry this is going to shatter her trust in not just Emily, but maybe even in me to some degree, even though I truly have been oblivious and innocent in this. I spent last night tossing and turning, maybe slept a couple hours at most. I feel like a garbage friend and a garbage husband all at once. I hate that this happened. I hate that Emily has been hurting in silence for years, and I didn't see it. Part of me is even a little angry at her. Not for having feelings, you can't really control that, but for telling me like this, especially knowing I'm married. It feels like she dumped this huge emotional weight on me, and now I have to deal with it, while she got to confess and relieve her own burden. But then I instantly feel guilty for thinking that, because I know she was probably at a breaking point. It must have been eating her alive, and she couldn't hold it in anymore. I keep asking myself, why now? Why tell me now, out of all times? She said years. Why not before I got married, or at any other point? Did something specific trigger her to confess on a random Tuesday night? She seemed sober enough. We each only had maybe 2 drinks over the whole evening. Was it planned, or did it just spill out in a moment of intense emotion? Is she going to regret telling me once the dust settles? So many questions swirling in my head. This morning I texted Emily a short message. Hey, just checking if you're okay. Please let me know, I'm here for you. She hasn't responded yet, and that's unlike her. She almost always texts back quickly, even if it's just an emoji or a TTYL. I haven't tried calling her, and she hasn't reached out to me. I'm worried about her. She was an absolute mess when I left. I don't know if she's drowning in regret, or heartbreak, or shame, or all of the above. Part of me wants to drive over to her place and check on her in person, but I also think I might be the last person she wants to see right now, given I couldn't give her the answer she wanted. Meanwhile, I have to somehow get through a workday and pretend everything is normal. I have a big meeting in a couple of hours, and I am in no shape for it. My eyes are red and puffy from crying and no sleep. My mind is in another dimension, and I feel physically sick with anxiety. I might have to call in and say I'm ill because I honestly don't trust myself to function normally at the office right now. I haven't even begun to sort out what this means for the future. Emily is my best friend, practically family. Or at least she was. What are we now? Can our friendship survive this? Should it survive this? I care about her so much I don't want to lose her in my life. But I also don't see how we can just pretend nothing happened. She has romantic feelings for me. Being around me and my wife, who I know she'll feel guilty around, might be torture for her. And from my wife's perspective, even if Jess is the most understanding person in the world, I doubt she'd be comfortable with me maintaining a close friendship with someone who confessed love for me and literally tried to kiss me. That's just an impossible situation. Jess, my wife, absolutely needs to know. I know that. I would want to know if the roles were reversed. Keeping this secret feels wrong. But I'm also terrified. I'm bracing myself for her reaction. Will she be angry? Hurt? Will she question whether I ever did anything to lead Emily on? Or if I harbored feelings too? I was so taken aback last night that it made me question myself, like, did I ever unconsciously encourage this? Did I ever give Emily the wrong idea? I really don't think so. I have always treated her like a sister, nothing more. But of course now I'm second-guessing every hug, every long phone call, every time we spent time together without Jess. There's also this. A tiny part of me, which I hate to admit, is flattered? Not in a happy or proud way, but in a bittersweet tragic way. Like, knowing that someone I respect and care about so deeply has loved me like that. It does something weird to my heart. It doesn't change how I feel, but it's a lot to process that I've meant that much to her for so long. It makes me want to simultaneously cry for her pain and, hug her, which is probably not appropriate right now. I feel guilty even acknowledging that feeling of flattery or ego stroke because it feels like a betrayal of my wife somehow. I know this situation isn't about my ego. It's about a lot of pain and friendship and love and betrayal in a sense. I'm just being honest that my feelings are a jumbled mess right now. I'm devastated for Emily. I'm worried sick about what this will do to Jess. I'm anxious about what the hell I'm supposed to do next. And I feel this heavy weight of guilt, confusion, and grief, because I suspect the friendship I had with Emily might be essentially over, at least in its old form. We can't go back to how we were. That breaks my heart too. I haven't talked to anyone in real life about this yet. I don't want to vent to mutual friends because I don't want to betray Emily or cause drama in our friend circle unless absolutely necessary. I can't talk to Jess until I see her in person tomorrow. I feel this should really be done face to face. So I'm turning to the internet strangers for perspective, on a throwaway account. How do I even begin to handle this? How do I tell my wife without completely devastating her? What do I do about Emily? Do I give her space? Do I try to remain her friend from a distance? Or do I have to cut her off to save my marriage? Is there any coming back from this? For anyone? It feels like no matter what, hearts are going to be broken. I'm sorry this is so long. I just have no one I can talk to openly right now. If anyone has been in a similar situation, or has any advice, I'll take it. I feel like I'm walking a tightrope, and there's no way to not fall off. TLDR. My lifelong best friend, 31F, confessed that she's been in love with me for years and even kissed me, despite me being married. I'm 32M. I was blindsided and didn't return her feelings. Now I'm left to figure out how to tell my wife, and I'm terrified this revelation will destroy my friendship, my wife's trust, or even my marriage. I'm at a complete loss. Update 1. First off, I want to thank everyone for the advice and support on my original post. I didn't expect it to blow up like it did. Reading your responses really helped me steel myself for what I had to do next. The consensus was overwhelming. I needed to tell my wife everything, and I needed to do it ASAP, in person. A lot of you also expressed concern for Emily's well-being, which I share. It's been an emotionally exhausting 24 hours, but I have some updates. I waited for Jessica to get home from her work trip last night. Those were the longest hours of my life, just pacing and rehearsing how I would break this to her. When she finally walked through the door, around 7 p.m., she immediately knew something was off. She looked tired from traveling. and I almost lost my nerve seeing her so drained, but I knew I had to do it. I said, "We need to talk," and led her to the couch. My heart was pounding out of my chest. I honestly don't remember word for word how it went. It's a bit of a blur. I started by saying I'd been keeping something from her. Her face went pale when I said that, and that it was weighing heavily on me, and that she deserved to know the truth. I reassured her that I haven't cheated, and would never cheat on her, but something did happen that I needed to tell her. I basically recounted the story, that I went out with Emily, that Emily confessed she's in love with me and had been for years, and that she even tried to kiss me. I made it very clear that I did not kiss her back, and I left immediately after. I also told Jess that I had absolutely no idea Emily felt this way, and that I shut it down as best I could in the moment. I was talking kind of fast, rambling, and I could see Jess's face change as she processed each part. First came confusion, then shock, then anger, then tears. She barely said anything while I was explaining, just listened in stunned silence. When I got to the part about the kiss, she closed her eyes and I saw tears start falling down her cheeks. That broke me. I moved closer to her and tried to put my hand on her shoulder, but she flinched and said, "Please don't." That hurt, but I understood. When I finished telling her everything, the room was dead silent for a few moments, except for her sniffling. I was shaking, actually physically shaking, waiting for her to respond. Finally, she opened her eyes, looked at me with this wounded expression, and the first thing she said was, "You should have told me right away." Her voice was not much above a whisper, but it had an edge. I immediately apologized for not telling her the same night. I said I was in shock and didn't want to do it over the phone while she was away, but I realize now I should have at least given her a heads up. She just nodded slightly, looking down at her hands. Then she started firing off questions, her voice trembling between anger and hurt. "Did you know? Did you ever suspect she had feelings?" I said no, never in a million years did I suspect it. She asked, "Have you ever had feelings for her?" I said no, absolutely not, that my only feelings for Emily were friendship, nothing more. She asked for every detail. What exactly did she say? What did you say? I recounted as best I could. When I repeated Emily's words, "I'm in love with you, have been for years," Jess let out this bitter laugh, like a half sob. She said, "All those times I asked, and you swore nothing was going on. I insisted that as far as I knew, nothing was going on, that I never lied to her because I truly didn't know." Jess then asked about the kiss. "Did you kiss her? Even for a second?" I told her exactly what happened, that Emily kissed me, more like pressed her lips to mine, for maybe a second or two, and I pushed her away immediately. I promised on everything that I did not kiss back. Jess nodded, but I could see that image hurt her deeply. Then her anger seemed to shift more toward Emily. She asked, "How could she do this? She was supposed to be my friend, too." She was crying more openly then. I tried to hold her, and this time she let me. She basically collapsed into my arms and just sobbed. She said things like, "I trusted her, I trusted you, I never thought she'd... Why now? Why would she do this to us?" I had no answers. I just held her and kept saying I was sorry, and that I love her so much. We sat like that for a long while. Eventually, Jessica pulled herself together a bit and asked, "Have you talked to her since?" I told Jess that I texted Emily yesterday morning to ask if she was okay, but she didn't reply, and that I haven't reached out since. Jess nodded and said, "Good, I don't want you to." She told me she needs time to process, and that she can't even think about what to do regarding Emily yet, but for now, she, my wife, has no desire to speak to or see Emily again. I told her I would respect whatever she needs. I also told her I'd be willing to cut contact with Emily completely if that's what she ultimately wants. That seemed to reassure her a bit, but I could tell she was still really shaken. That night was rough. We both were exhausted and emotionally spent. Jess didn't want dinner, she just went upstairs. I found her in our bedroom, curled up on the bed, sort of staring at the wall. I sat next to her and asked if she wanted to talk more, or if she wanted space. She said quietly, "Just hold me." So I did. We lay there for hours. She would start crying, then calm down, then get angry and say something like, "I just can't believe she would do that," then cry again. I mostly just listened and validated her feelings, telling her she has every right to feel hurt and betrayed. At one point she asked me if I was going to miss having Emily in my life. I answered honestly, "Yes, but I'm more worried about you and us. You're my wife and you're my priority." She squeezed my hand but didn't respond further to that. I think she knows this is painful for me too, but she was, understandably, focused on her own pain and confusion. We eventually fell into a fitful sleep. This morning, Jess had to go to work. She insisted she needed the distraction. I offered to call in sick to my job so I could stay home or be with her, but she urged me to go to work as well and act normal. She said, "I don't want our entire lives to revolve around this right now. I just need to think. We can talk more tonight." She was a bit cold, but I could tell she was trying not to fall apart. She even managed a small, sad smile at me when she left, like to reassure me we're still okay, but I know this has rocked her pretty badly. Before she left, she did ask one thing. "If Emily contacts you, will you tell me?" I promised I would. She said, "Please do. I need to know what she's thinking." She also said she has no intention of reaching out to Emily herself right now, because she's too angry and doesn't see the point. She made her bed, now she can lie in it, were her exact words, which for my wife is pretty harsh. She's usually very gentle, so I can gauge her hurt by that tone. After Jess left, I finally got a text from Emily. It was actually a fairly long text, basically saying she's sorry for dropping that bomb on me, that she won't ever bother me or Jessica again, and that she hopes I have a good life, and that I can maybe one day forgive her for hurting me and Jess. It had a very goodbye-ish tone, like she was bowing out of my life. She also said, "I know I messed everything up, I'm so sorry." Reading it made me tear up. It's just so incredibly sad that it's come to this. I haven't responded to Emily. I'm honestly not sure if I should, or what I would even say. Right now, out of respect for my wife, I likely won't respond at all, at least not for the foreseeable future, especially since Emily basically said she wouldn't contact me anymore. It feels like she's removing herself from the equation. As much as that crushes me, maybe it's for the best. So here I am, at work, pretending to do tasks while I'm actually writing this update. I feel emotionally drained and numb, but I'm also somewhat relieved that Jess knows the truth now. Keeping that from her was eating me alive. She's hurt and angry, but we're talking, and that gives me hope that we'll get through this together. I know it'll take time for trust to fully mend, but Jess and I have a strong foundation, and I'm committed to making sure she feels safe and loved, and is my number one. As for Emily, I'm grieving. It feels like a death, honestly, the death of a friendship. Part of me wants to run to her and make sure she's okay, but I know I can't do that. I chose my marriage, and Emily herself seems to understand that, because she's voluntarily stepping back. I hope she leans on other friends or family and finds happiness eventually, because despite everything, she is, or was, an amazing friend and person. This just sucks all around. No one really wins here. I'll probably update one more time down the line if anything significant happens. For now, I'm going to focus on my wife and our marriage and give her all the love and support she needs to heal from this betrayal by someone she considered a friend. I feel like we're kind of in a delicate limbo, but at least the truth is out. Thanks again to everyone who offered advice. It gave me the push I needed to handle this head on. Hug your loved ones, and if you have a best friend of the opposite sex, maybe double check once in a while that boundaries are clear, I guess. This has been one hell of a lesson. Update 2. I never imagined I'd be writing this kind of update. It's been about 2 weeks since my last post. I was hoping things would calm down and that maybe life would start to return to normal, a new normal at least. But everything took a turn for the worse a few days ago, and I'm still reeling. In the 2 weeks after telling my wife the truth, Jess and I have been doing our best to work through the aftermath. It hasn't been easy. Jess has been oscillating between trying to pretend everything is fine and suddenly breaking down in tears, or getting angry whenever something reminds her of Emily. I've been patient and reassuring, trying to give her time. We even discussed possibly doing a couples therapy session if needed, but hadn't scheduled anything yet. Meanwhile, I kept my promise and did not contact Emily, nor did she contact me after her one goodbye text. True to her word, she vanished from our lives. No calls, no random liking of our social media posts. Her accounts went dark, actually. She hasn't posted anything since that night. It was like she dropped off the face of the earth. I was worried, but I respected the boundary, as painful as it was. I thought about her a lot, though. Every day, honestly. It's hard to just shut off 14 years of friendship and act like a person is dead to you. I wondered how she was coping, if she had someone to talk to. I ended up confiding in one mutual friend. Without giving full details, I just said Emily and I had a falling out and weren't speaking. That friend told me Emily had taken a leave from work claiming illness, so that made me even more concerned, but again, I didn't reach out. Anyway, fast forward to 3 days ago. Jess and I were having a quiet Sunday at home. Things between us were tentatively okay that day. We even went out for breakfast and were cuddling on the couch watching a show in the afternoon. I remember thinking maybe we're going to be all right. Around 4 p.m., I got a phone call from an unknown number. I normally don't answer those, but I did because we'd recently been getting spam and I was annoyed and ready to tell some telemarketer off. I answered with a grumpy, "Hello?" It wasn't a telemarketer. It was Emily's younger sister. Let's call her Claire. I barely know Claire. We've met maybe twice, ever. My heart sank the moment I heard her voice. She was sobbing. It took me a second to understand what she was saying, because my brain immediately went to, oh, God, is Emily? I caught the words Emily and hospital, and I swear, I felt like I was going to faint. I jumped up from the couch, startling Jess, and basically barked into the phone. What happened? Is she okay? Jess's eyes went wide. She could obviously tell something bad involving Emily was happening. Claire was crying so hard it was difficult to piece together, but the gist was, Emily had attempted suicide by overdosing on a bunch of pills. Claire found her on the floor of her apartment, barely conscious, after Emily sent a goodbye text to their mom. They called an ambulance and got her to the hospital in time. She was alive, but in bad shape, and was still unconscious. Claire said the doctors were monitoring her, and that she had to be put on a ventilator temporarily because of the respiratory depression from the overdose. I felt like I got hit by a truck. My legs literally gave out, and I sat on the floor. I remember saying, oh my God, over and over. Jess was next to me now, panicking, asking what happened. I think I said to Claire, I'll be there as soon as I can, and hung up. I looked at Jess and just broke down, telling her, Emily tried to kill herself. She's in the hospital. Jess's face was a mix of shock and confusion. She immediately said, we need to go, come on, I'll drive. I was a crying mess and nodded. We grabbed our things and headed out. The hospital is across town, maybe a 30-minute drive. On the way, I was shaking and could barely speak. Jess kept one hand on mine the whole time, squeezing it, even though I could tell she was in her own state of shock. She kept saying softly, "She'll be okay. She has to be okay." We got to the hospital and found Claire in the waiting area, red-eyed and sniffling. There was also an older couple I recognized as Emily's parents. The moment I approached them, I just lost it. I started apologizing repeatedly. I said, I'm so sorry, probably a dozen times. Emily's mom, who was also crying, shook her head and just pulled me into a hug. She said, it's not your fault, but I still feel utterly responsible. If I had handled things differently, if I had checked on her, God, I don't know. We found out from her family that Emily had been severely depressed since that night. They didn't know the full context. They knew we had a falling out, but not that she confessed love to a married man. Apparently, Emily had confided in her sister that she, quote, lost her best friend and the love of her life in one fell swoop. Hearing that absolutely shattered me. Claire said she was keeping Emily company most nights because she was worried, but that Sunday she thought Emily seemed a bit better, so she left her alone for a few hours. In that window, Emily did it. She left a note apologizing to her family and saying she couldn't handle the pain. According to Claire, who later saw the note, a lot of it was about heartbreak and guilt. It didn't mention me by name, but it was obviously about our situation. At this point in the waiting room, Jess was sitting quietly off to the side. I think she felt like an outsider to the family's grief, she sort of was, but she looked so forlorn and concerned. I eventually went over and sat with her, and she immediately hugged me. She whispered, "This isn't your fault." She must have been really hurting. I just cried into my wife's shoulder. I felt like my heart was in a vice. After a couple hours, a doctor updated us that Emily was in stable condition. They had flushed the pills from her system, and she was breathing on her own now, though still unconscious. They expected her to wake up in the next day or so. Her family was allowed to go in briefly, 2 at a time, to see her. They asked if I wanted to go in as well. Initially I hesitated, looking at Jess, not wanting to upset her, but Jess gently nudged me and said, "Go. You should be there." So I went in with Claire. Seeing Emily lying in that hospital bed, pale, with IV lines and monitors beeping, was one of the most gut-wrenching sights of my life. This vibrant, beautiful person who had always been so full of life and support for me, reduced to this because of unrequited love and heartbreak, and probably other mental health struggles we didn't fully see. I held her hand. It was limp and unresponsive, and just sobbed. I told her I'm here, that I'm sorry, that she's not alone and she's so loved. Claire was crying too, telling her the family was there for her. I don't know if she could hear any of that, but I hope some part of her did. Eventually, we left her to rest and let her parents sit with her. By then, it was late evening. Jess and I decided to go home, since there was nothing more we could do, and the doctors said to let her wake naturally. I offered for Jess to come in to see Emily as well, but she shook her head and said, "I don't want to intrude right now." I understood. The drive home was quiet. I was mentally and physically exhausted. Jess finally broke the silence and asked softly, "How are you feeling?" I didn't even know how to answer. I said something like, "Terrible. Guilty. Just broken." She squeezed my hand again and said, "I don't blame you, you know. She didn't do this to hurt us. She was hurting herself." That surprised me a bit, to hear Jess be so compassionate toward the person who had upended our lives. But I think seeing the real-life consequences put things in perspective for her. For both of us. When we got home, I told Jess, "I feel like this is all my fault." And she responded, "It's not your fault that she fell in love with you, or that she felt she had no way out of her pain. You did the best you could in a horrible situation." I started crying again, and she hugged me tightly. It was the most comforted I felt by her since this whole ordeal began. The last couple days have been intense. Emily woke up yesterday morning. Claire called to let me know. I haven't seen Emily yet since she woke up. Only family is allowed during recovery, and they also want to get her psychiatric help immediately, which is a relief. I sent a note through Claire basically saying, "I'm so glad you're still here. Please get better. We care about you. I'm here in whatever way is appropriate." She texted back later that day, apparently with Emily's okay, that Emily read my note and started crying. I think that means something positive. Jess and I have talked a lot, and oddly, this crisis seems to have brought us closer in some ways. It's like we were united in our worry for Emily's survival. Jess even said to me, "I don't hate her. I was so angry, but I never wanted this. I just want her to be okay." That was a huge relief to hear. I think all the resentment Jess had toward Emily kind of dissolved when faced with the reality of nearly losing her. Now here's the complicated part. What happens next? I have no idea. Emily will likely be hospitalized a while, and then I assume she'll need therapy, maybe stay with her parents for a bit. I do know that I want to be part of her healing, if possible, because despite everything, I still care about her deeply. But I have to balance that with my marriage and boundaries. Jess has amazingly said that when Emily is ready, she'd be okay with the 3 of us sitting down to talk, maybe with a counselor involved. That stunned me, honestly. I think seeing Emily's pain made Jess realize that Emily wasn't trying to maliciously steal me away. She was just desperately in love and hopeless. It doesn't excuse what happened, but it makes it more tragic than infuriating. As of right now, I'm just taking it 1 hour at a time. I'm working from home for a few days, because I'm a wreck and want to be available if the hospital calls. Jess has also taken a couple days off to stay with me, and probably to process her own feelings about all this. I wish I had a neat ending or resolution, but life isn't a movie. This is messy and ongoing. The good news is, Emily is alive, thank God. My marriage is intact, and perhaps even stronger in some strange way, though this is not how I would have wanted it to strengthen. The bad news, there's a lot of healing that needs to happen for everyone. Emily has a long road ahead, recovering not just from this attempt, but from the underlying heartbreak and mental health struggles. I have guilt and grief to work through. Part of me will always feel responsible, even if logically I might not be. Jessica has to work through the betrayal she felt, and now the trauma of nearly losing a friend. Because despite it all, Jess did care about Emily as a friend before. We plan to get some joint counseling, and I'm sure Emily will get professional help too. I don't know if our old friendship will ever resume in any form. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know if Jess and Emily will ever speak again, either. It's all uncertain.